Good morning, good day, and good evening. I'm, as always, your host, Brody Robertson, and today, I don't know if you guys remember the whole Unity thing that was happening like a week or so ago, the whole, runtime fee stuff. Well, during that saga, a bunch of game engines started getting a lot of attention. One game engine in particular being Godot. And today, we have the executive director of the Godot Foundation on the show. Welcome. How about you introduce yourself? Let people know who you are.
Hello, I'm Emilio Coppola, online usually Emmy, and yeah, as you said, I'm the executive director of the Godot Foundation, but I also been part of the community for some time. I've been making videos, and you'll find me around in the Godot spaces online.
So, I guess explain. We can start with what the foundation actually does. Like, I know the foundation and the project are two separate entities, but what is the relationship between the two?
So I wouldn't say they're different entities, but
Okay.
the foundation is the legal entity
Yeah.
of the project because once you make one of these, like most of the open source projects like distros or programs, they have this sort of structure where you have some people working on it, and if you want to donate to them, there needs to be like a place where you have, like a proper bank account that the money will go to the organization. And also like somebody needs to hold the licenses, so it could be like the trademarks or like the repositories or anything that belongs to a project. So that's the foundation usually. Like you have popular foundations everywhere nowadays. So this one in particular would be for Godot. So our goal is only to work for the for the Godot engine and everything that needs to be done in that area. So yeah.
So, what in particular is your role in the foundation? Because I know, like, you're the executive director, but what exactly does that entail?
Well, at the moment, since we're very little people, it's everything,
Right,
right?
right, fair enough.
So, uh, what I do the most is speaking with the different companies that want to be giving grants to the project, like managing the donations, paying the contractors, and doing all those sorts of administrative tasks. But also, we do a lot of work in terms of like releasing, like making the blog posts, like letting people know, like social media. So it's a little bit of everything. At the moment, there isn't like a huge structure behind the engine because we're quite new, and the organization was founded like 1 year ago.
Oh,
Before we
wow.
were a project inside the Software Freedom Conservancy, which provides this sort of administrative structure to a lot of projects like Inkscape or others like that. So, like, since we grew so much, we needed to find a place that we could be a little bit more fast with the changes and, like taking a bit more of ownership of everything. And that's what we did. So, yeah,
So,
we're not
the
so many.
the SSC was sort of like a convenient place to be whilst it was smaller, but as it became this project that exists sort of in its own right, it needed some sort of separate entity to sort of easily manage all that.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because there's many things that you need to do that require a lot of like back and forth with different like contracts or things like that, and also, this was out of necessity. Like the project Godot engine was started in a small studio in Argentina, and if they wanted to handle all this like by themselves from Argentina, it was impossible for them to make this sort of organization. So the Software Free and Conservancy was the solution for them to start getting donations and getting contractors paid from there to do all that. Once the project was big enough and there were more people involved, it was easier to also like say like let's make our own thing. And you know some of the rules that maybe in one organization are not so popular. Let's say we want to sell some merch, that could be a little bit problematic if we do it with another organization like the Software Freedom Conservancy. But now that we have our own organization, we can do that and we can handle those sorts of things. Our
Right.
biggest reason was also the asset store that we want to make, which will involve, if you've been making games, usually you can buy and sell assets from other game developers and artists. So that's something also that we needed to have our own organization to handle. um, yeah, those were the main reasons. to start looking into it.
Mhm. The asset store sort of links into the whole Unity stuff we will get into eventually. I tend to like to ramble on a bit before we actually get to the main topic, but
Yeah.
Godot right now has the asset marketplace. Like, that's a thing that exists. But a lot of people are asking for an asset store more akin to what is offered by Unreal, what is offered by Unity. What exactly is the asset marketplace? Yeah, what is the asset marketplace, and what would an asset store do differently that people are asking for?
So what we have at the moment is called Asset Library,
Yep, sorry,
and it's
library.
basically, see, yeah, it's a repository with a lot of projects that you can install directly from your editor,
Mhm.
and those are all open source. Like, they are free. You cannot buy, you cannot sell anything there. You just can download projects from there, and usually is like an index of GitHub or GitLab or whatever where they hosted like projects, so you can get them from it. Um,
So it's effectively like a
and
software
that's
repository.
yeah, it's very simple. The functionality is very limited. You don't have any sort of user reviews. You don't have a lot of things, but it's been working great for a long time. It's just that some features that people want are not there yet.
Right.
And the asset store would be the whole experience with the assets that you can buy and sell, and maybe some stuff that is not exactly free.
Mhm.
um, One thing that our community has a lot of programmers, because a lot of game developers are also programmers, and I think that the asset library also will include more people in the community that are not from a programming background. So if you make 3D models or stuff like that, it's a great way to get involved with the community. We
Mhm.
want to, of course, always incentivize open source licenses, so that we're going to try to be always using defaults that are open source. So if you want to do it, like selling or other kind of licenses, you have to change from the drop down or things like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's a lot of interest from a lot of people that are making tools that are very complicated, and they deserve to get some pay. And so yeah, providing those would be ideal. That's a bit the difference between what we have now and where we want to be.
Well, the way it looks like from the outside, if I look at, like, say, the Unity store, for example, obviously there are people that make games with Unity, but there are a lot of people who their entire purpose of using that engine is making tools that other people are going to use in their games and then selling them for, whatever price they want to be selling them for. So it sort of acts as like a new market that people can operate in making use of this tooling.
Yeah, yeah. It has created a lot of people that sustain themselves entirely by selling assets.
Mhm.
It's not our goal, like, just to create that, but it's something that the community wants. And one thing that we do usually is that we are a community driven project. So if the community is interested in having that, that's something that we work on. And yeah, I think that for most projects at the moment, the asset library is enough, and it's quite good. Like, it has updates and new stuff every day. Um, but yeah, some people, they just want to be a bit more, I don't know how to say it, professional, let's
Right.
say, and they want to sell their own things. I think also the reviews will be very handy, and other features that would hopefully can include better with the engine.
Mhm.
um, that would be like an upgrade to the entire ecosystem, because Godot is just the editor and the engine that you use and all that, but there's a lot of things that are around making a game, which is not happening inside Godot, and integrating those better would be ideal for the entire process of making a game.
Do you have any examples of, like, what would be the case there? Because I've not used the engine
For
myself.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's say there's some audio libraries that you have someone in your team that really likes a particular audio, like, proprietary thing, and you
Mhm.
want to include it in Godot. Right now you kind of have to go a little bit out of your way to find those integrations and install it and do it all that. So this would be like a very easy way to use those. And
Mhm.
mostly our users at the moment are mostly indie developers and small studios, but recently, like, there has been a lot of people getting into that. They want to use tools that are industry standards. So getting them directly from the editor or like things like that would be making it easier. Of course, it's not something that we would ever include because we are never going to be shipping proprietary code. But making like an ecosystem that can live around the editor would be really nice for also making some of our users that are not selling games but are making tools, make a living. That would be ideal.
So it's about sort of providing the ability for people to do so if they would like to, but not making that the main focus of the entire project. Sort of empowering
Exactly. Yeah,
people
yeah.
to do
This
what they
would
want to be
be
doing.
Yeah, yeah. This is, of course, the foundation will take a percentage of the sales. We still haven't defined which is the number, but it's not gonna be the same as in the other platform. It's gonna be lower probably.
It's not going to be the
That will be a
30%
way
that
for us
Steam
to.
takes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, that's probably not 29.9, right? No, no, but
Yeah.
uh, the thing is, it's another way for us to get more funding and
Mhm.
to hire more people to work on the engine. That's also always a balancing act because doing an initiative like this requires to have some people working on it. Uh, that's why we don't want to grow it and make it the sole focus of this because we are a non-profit organization. Our goal is not to make money, it's to make the engine better. And I think this is a feature that will make the engine better, and we won't be like dedicating all of our resources there. So it's just an add-on on top of what we are doing at the
Mhm.
moment.
No, that definitely makes sense. I've been seeing a lot of really cool stuff being done with the engine, but I'm sure that if you provide the ability for people to, you know, just like I okay, so I get that the whole like doing everything open source, like that's great, but there are some people out there who simply that's just not like their intention. Like they are trying to like they're not doing it for the good of the community. They're doing it because they are trying. Obviously, they're trying to make some people want to use, but they want to like actually profit from it. So I think, yeah, I think actually getting that set up is going to be incredibly powerful. I've heard people sort of. I did like a bit of like prior research on it. It seems like people have been asking for a store for a really long time, like way before the foundation even existed. Like it seems like pretty much since Godot's had any sort of traction, any sort of community that's formed around it, it seems like at least a couple of people have mentioned the idea of having a because obviously someone could always do like a third party store, but having something that is directly connected to the engine, like that's something people seem to have always wanted.
Yeah, yeah. I think also it comes like if you use other engines, like say Unity, a lot of people are used to just buying three, four assets, like three, four like things from the asset store and put a game together real quick and get like hit the ground running with it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
just you buy three, four stuff, like one for terrain editor, like some models and some weather system, and then you have just like a game already, kind of. And that's something you don't have at the moment. And like the store also like was requested for a long time, but we didn't have like the structure to being able to do it. We
Mm-hmm.
do now. That's the main difference. There's some things that are a bit more tricky in terms of handling the payments and the fact that this is a non-profit organization. So like, why are you making a store that will kind of like pay users that are selling stuff and all that? So once we figure all that out and we notice that, yeah, we can do it, we are just working on it. But yeah, I think it's the necessity from many devs to just not reinvent the wheel, I guess. There's this convenience of using blocks and pieces from other people that already made solutions, that speeds up a lot of the development.
Mm-hmm. Even if it's not keeping
So
it
yeah,
in like the final product, at least using it during the prototyping phase, and then replacing it as you go further along. Sort of quickly getting your idea up and running, and then bring in your own style as you go.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, that's just one of the things that I've seen, being used a lot. So there's a lot, right? Like you need audio packs, things like that. Having it you can go theoretically to a platform like itch.io, buy it, download it, include it.
Yeah.
It's also like the convenience and also the trustworthiness of those stores. There are some stores that are claiming to be like the Godot store or stuff like that, which are not handled by the organization,
Hmm.
but they don't get a lot of traction because the users want to see something coming from us,
Hmm.
and took us longer than we anticipated, but we slowly but surely we're getting there.
I presume you don't want to mention when a possibility of it happening is. It's sort of like, because if you say a date or you say a rough estimate, someone's gonna hold you to that.
Yeah, no, no, it's you know as soon as possible. We would like it to have it like yesterday, right?
Mhm.
But there are some things that just need to happen first, and like we're gonna do like first like a small program where we invite some like handpicked creators to
Yeah.
test the platform, to be the first one to use it. Like we got in touch with some people that are also already like successful in other platforms to see what they think about it. And once we have like that small test program and all that, we're gonna start opening slowly to different people to sign up, and then releasing it like to everybody.
Mhm.
So it's gonna be like a small rollout. It's not gonna be like from one day to the other that
Yeah.
everything's open, but yeah, there's a lot of challenges that maybe like are a bit out of scope. But yeah, I think the idea of an asset store is something that if you've been in programming, it's like I could program that in a weekend, right?
Mhm.
But the legal part of like the technical, like not technical parts are too complicated. Like
Mhm.
people submitting assets that are not from like they don't have the rights to publish,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
AI content at the moment, or spam. Like there's so many like too many weird stuff online. As soon as you include money, things get a little bit more complicated.
Mhm.
So we need to make it good.
Well, just the whole
So not
issue
not the
of
timeline.
mhm. Just the whole issue of handling foreign money is just a problem. Like, ignoring all the rest of it, just
Yeah.
accepting, being able to accept payments from all of these different regions, I'm sure that just is a nightmare by itself.
Yeah. Also
All these different tax
refunds
laws. Oh,
and
yeah, refunds as well, yeah.
there's many things that you have to consider. That the technology is very simple, and again, our community is very like mostly programmers,
Mhm.
and we are also like on the team mostly programmers. So we think about the system that needs to be there, but we don't think about all those other areas of the project that are just like a headache to solve.
Well, I guess that's the other value of having the foundation because, you could just have the developers that are working on the code base dealing with all the legal stuff as well, but they have programming to do. And yeah, separating that out and
Yeah,
letting someone else handle the legal stuff is just it's for the best.
yeah. No. You need someone that knows what's really like going on
Mhm.
to do those sorts of things. That's also making some stuff slower, right? Like again, if it was just the technology, we could just get together, work on it, like make a sprint, do it really like as good as possible. But we don't know some things. The foundation is an organization in the Netherlands, and we have some people on the foundation who speak Dutch and stuff like that. But not all of us do.
Mm.
So maybe doing those sort of legal stuff, like it starts also to create language barrier as well.
Mhm.
So it requires some people that know, and yeah, we're getting there. We're very excited actually. Like we announced it very long ago, but I don't know. Like we announced many things on our blog, and most of people do read it. But then, if you go further and further away from our community, they are not so aware.
Mhm.
So we recently had to re-announce it, and people were like, "Oh, this is amazing! This is like
Well, especially
But
makes
it's fine.
sense.
Once it's there and you
Mhm.
can open it and use it, people will be happy.
It especially makes sense because a lot of people may not have heard of the engine until fairly recently. Like, you said you've been
Yeah.
involved in Godot for a while now. Like, when did you first hear about the engine? When did you first get involved with it?
I think it was like 5 years ago or 6 years ago. And yeah, I started using it for a bit, and then I started a YouTube channel where I made some tutorials and things like that.
What was the
Um,
landscape of tutorials back then? Were there really any that existed at the time, or was it still fairly bare?
it was very very like in some areas it was really well covered.
Mhm.
Like some areas were completely covered from top to bottom, like great. Some other areas were not, and that's where I kind of started making videos about those areas. Um, yeah, I think it still is a good opportunity because every time you have these sort of new projects that are getting popular and there's not a lot of content creators making stuff about it, you have your place, right? You can find your niche and you can grow. Like there's a demand, like there's a lot of people looking for specific materials, and there are some big YouTubers at the moment, like in Godot, but they don't cover every area of the engine, and you
Right.
will always find some areas that you can, make some videos or tutorials or stuff like that, and you will find success quite easily. Like it's a good way to start
Yeah,
a channel.
I'm seeing some like I'm seeing people like I see a video here from Free Code Camp. Wow. I see like there is definitely a lot of stuff here now, but and I hate YouTube search. It's showing me my recommended stuff. So you know that thing with YouTube where you search for
Yes.
a specific term and then halfway down it starts showing you for you stuff? Like, no, I searched for a
Yeah.
term. Show me that. Stop that.
Yeah.
Ignoring that stuff, uh
Yeah.
yeah, there's clearly like actual content now, but from so when you were doing those tutorials, what was your particular focus?
I started like I had actually a moment very similar to what Unity had at the moment, which was I was making games in Game Maker.
Okay.
That's my brother and I were working on it. Like we had a few games released. It was really popular, but then suddenly we did a crowdsourcing like a crowdfunding campaign. It went well, but we were in between versions. Like I'm just making it super short. I did a talk in the Penpot Fest. If you want to look at the entire story, it's online. But we were in that moment where they changed the license, where you couldn't actually like use the lifetime license that I had bought, with my first
Oh.
money when I was like 14, like, and yeah, we had to choose about compromising the idea of the project or releasing with a new version, and it was very very bad for us in general. We all like in the small studio we all quit making games after that, and it felt really kind of similar to this. It wasn't as dramatic as the Unity events,
Yeah.
but I also felt like once you base your stuff in proprietary software and you depend on the license, you don't know when they can change the license, and you are suddenly in risk. So that's when I started to make videos about how to transition from game maker to Godot. So the first videos I did were for that, like just the knowledge I had in game maker, how you can do it the same in Godot, explain the basic stuff. And from there I continue making more tutorials that I check people asking online many times, and then I said, okay, there's many people asking about this. Let's make a video about that, and yeah.
Wow. Well, I guess that I didn't know you had. Yeah, I didn't know. I hadn't actually seen you had an existing project before, existing game before. I. I guess I didn't do that my research that deeply then. What was that game you
It
did?
it was Adventure OS. That was the name. It wasn't too successful. We actually, wanted to just release it
Mhm,
because we did the promise on the campaign, but that
mhm,
wasn't the game that we wanted to make. It
mhm.
was the game that we had to do, let's say.
Right.
Um, but yeah, no, like I always been making games and I really like it. That's why also I feel like when I found Godot, there was this spark again, right? Like this spark of let's make more stuff because it's really easy to use. It's very intuitive, and honestly, it's super tiny. You don't have to log in to open it, right? Like it's just one file that you just open and that's it. And that was really, really cool. And my experience when I was trying, being 100% Linux, everything open source, like I couldn't get any of the other engines to run properly. Like you had to do like a virtual machine, whatever. It was very, very troublesome.
Mhm,
And then you have other stuff that honestly for talented people it's fine.
mhm,
Like you can code directly. But for me, coding was always like the means to an end.
mhm.
and I couldn't just wrap my head around just doing everything via code.
Right.
So Godot has all these, visual tools that you can just do stuff with it. You can do everything via code, but you don't have to if you don't want.
Mhm.
And that's what I liked.
Well,
Yeah.
with Godot, I with a lot of the people suddenly sort of finding out about the engine, in many ways, like at a surface level, it looks kinda similar to Unity. But that's at a surface level. Like, my understanding is when you start looking into how it actually works, the way it functions is very different. And a lot of people are sort of now trying to like wrap their head around like what the differences actually are. So from your perspective, like firstly, what is similar? Like what do they do in a similar way? And then what do people need to like really change the way they approach it with this engine?
So I have to say, I never used Unity
Okay, fair
like
enough.
properly, so I cannot give you too much Unity advice
Well,
in terms of that.
okay.
And for
How
the
does Godot approach
similarities,
things then? Yeah.
yeah, for similarities, I feel like there's some design language already that we've been developing, like all of us in many programs that looks very similar, right? Like we have an inspector, we have a toolbar, we have a viewport, we have the command at the bottom, right? Like with the errors. So all those things are gonna find you're gonna find familiar in many programs. But I think that the best thing and how Godot works in particular is that everything is a node, and a node can be like a group of nodes. So it's kind of like this um, composition that you make between nodes that can also be scenes. You can make a few nodes being a scene, but also put that scene inside of another scene with another node. So it's very modular in this in structure, and I think that there's some equivalences in Unity that people think, oh yeah, this is like that in Unity, but it's not exactly like that. There is a talk by Andy Touch, who was a developer at Unity, and it's from the Nordic Game Jam from this year, and it's how to transition your knowledge from Unity to Godot, which I recommend. It's quite good. It helped me understand a little bit how the Unity users think, but yeah, I never used it myself, so
Okay.
I cannot go deeper.
No, that's fair enough. Um, yeah, I wasn't sure if you had any experience with that because you did say you obviously had used GameMaker before, but I wasn't sure if you'd played around with Unity or not, or if you had any sort of, I guess, any sort of understanding about the similarities there. But I I'm sure you've at least seen like some of the people who have been kind of confused about the differences, like posting about it on Reddit or Twitter or whatever, trying to wrap their head around like how they sort of need to approach it in a different way. Like, because, especially from someone who's outside of, like, I at least have a programming background. I understand that, like, different tooling works differently, but someone who's outside of that, I've seen a lot of people who are like, oh, especially like at the start, like, oh, just leave Unity, go to another, just go to Godot, go to Unreal, just put your game in it as if it's like just a drag and drop and it just works. Especially with Unreal, because Unreal is
Yeah,
C++. Like, that's not even
yeah,
remotely close to a drag and drop there. You're rewriting everything.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
At least
Yeah, no,
Godot has the C sharp stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Obviously different
It's the
APIs and
gamer
stuff, but
take,
like the
right?
language is the same.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a very common gamer take, right? Like when
Yeah.
Starfield was released, like, oh, this game should have been in Unity. It's like, no comment. But yeah, I feel like there's also some expectations from people that are not met, and that's one of the things that we're finding here. So I told you I wasn't using Unity before. Many other people never used Unity before, and we were always making Godot being better at being Godot, right?
Right.
Like Yuri, one of our team members, said on Twitter, like, we cannot make a better Unity, we can make a better Godot. So that's what you're gonna get
Yep.
here. And that's one thing that maybe like some people understand when they jump into it and they say, this is a new thing, let's learn this new thing. And a lot of concepts are gonna be the same, right? Like it's not like you're gonna forget everything about game development. You're gonna have all those
Sure,
things
yeah.
there, but
Like,
maybe you do them in a different way. But some other people really wanted to be working as Unity, and
Mhm,
that's a bit unfortunate because they're gonna be frustrated if they try to do it like that.
mhm,
With C sharp, yes, you can use C sharp, but also like you can also be using Python in two different projects and it will feel different. Like
mhm.
it's not the same making a website in Flask than making a website in Django.
Mm,
You know,
mm.
you're gonna find like, yeah, you're using the same syntax. Congratulations, right? But then everything else is
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
different. Um,
Same
so yeah, of
underlying.
course,
I guess there'll be similar underlying concept. Like, you're still going to work with sockets and all that, but like the actual the APIs you're dealing with are all entirely different. Like the library is entirely
exactly.
different.
Exactly. So, those things are, they're never going to be the same,
Mhm,
but we want to improve the experience for those users. Like we have, even before the Unity stuff, like 20% of our users are using C Sharp to make games because we also have another language in Godot, which is GDScript, which is very simple, very integrated to the engine, it's kind of like, it has like Python syntax, but it's
mhm,
very straightforward for making games. And yeah, like we want to improve the C sharp experience in Godot. So that's something that, there are some conversations online that get quite heated sometimes because people want to really do stuff in a certain way.
mhm,
And, the reason why maybe you don't do it like that in Godot is because like nobody needed to do it
mhm,
at the
mhm,
moment. And, as I told you before, we work mostly like following the demand of our users. So if our users want something, then we're gonna improve it. So now we find all those new users that are really into working only with C sharp, and we're gonna try to improve the experience with that. But of course, it will take time.
mhm.
It's not something we can do instantly.
Well, I did want to ask you about the whole GDScript and C sharp thing. Like, what actually is the difference? Like, in the engine, like, what sort of integrations does GDScript have that C sharp doesn't have? Like, from a developer's perspective, like, what are they missing out on if they go with the C sharp route as it currently stands? Obviously, you said that it's trying to be improved as it goes on, but as it stands right now.
So at the moment, you can download two versions of Godot. One
Mhm,
version includes only GDScript. The other version includes the possibility of using C sharp and GDScript.
mhm, mhm.
You can use them, at the same time. You can have some nodes using GDScript, some
Oh,
others
okay.
using C sharp, as you prefer. So that's one thing that one of the barriers that we want to just merge them together. So in the future, you can have only one file that you can download. Right now, you have that choice. And also, currently in Godot 4, you cannot export the C sharp games to iOS and Android
Okay.
and web because we moved from using Mono to using .NET, and
Oh,
unfortunately,
right.
like it's
I
not
forgot all that
it's
happened.
not there yet.
Yeah.
And the version like 4.2 is probably gonna be able to export to Android for sure. Like
Mhm,
that's something like it's already kind of working. iOS, it's always a mystery, but it's our goal as well. But yeah, those are like the differences in terms of like why some people were kind of asking for better support in those areas. If you're making a desktop game, you usually don't have any issues. But if you want to make a web game or a mobile game, then you find those limitations with the current version. And that's also like a big portion of users from Unity made mobile games. So
mhm.
for them, it's really important to be able to export to mobile. So yeah.
I completely forgotten who you mentioned .NET. That .NET used to be a separate thing from .NET Core, and then they got rid of .NET, and now .NET Core is .NET.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's Microsoft naming things.
Hey, at least
It's like the
.NET's open
Xbox,
source
right?
now, so hey, that's look.
Yeah.
Well, they just deleted the proprietary one, but whatever. It's open source, so it's fine. Um,
Yeah.
so uh, you're saying GDScript is kind of like Python.
It
Uh,
looks similar.
some
It's not
okay.
entirely one to one.
Sure, yeah, no, I didn't expect it to be one to one, but yeah, having a look at it is, yeah, that is really Pythony. Wow, huh? Like,
Yeah,
obviously,
it
there's like
uses
enums which Python doesn't have, and a bunch of other things, but like, from a basic syntactic level, like, yeah, I this would be like very simple to Oh, and it does. Well, hey, one thing you didn't copy with Python is the way it does object oriented and stuff. Oh my god, have you ever tried to do OO in Python? It's not.
Uh, a
Don't
little bit, but not so much.
don't.
Yeah, yeah. And I usually prefer functional
Yeah.
programming, but yeah.
Okay.
Um,
OO in Python is the most
and
disgusting thing you'll ever see.
we try every time we implement something in GDScript, we try to make it like we see what's out there in Python,
Mhm.
right? Like when we
Yeah,
added
yeah.
like the static typing, like like you can specify types and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Like we try to be as similar as possible there. But in some other areas, it just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So then there's like at the moment we're very lucky that we have like quite a good GDScript team, like
Mhm.
a group of people quite active, and they have been making amazing progress in it. And there's also this this compromise of let's make it easy, but also like not too different to what people expect. So
Mhm.
I really like it that you don't have to be maybe specifying a lot of stuff. That the engine is quite good integrated, so it kind of knows what you want to do with it,
Mhm.
and you don't have to be like if you want to do Python bindings, which is something you can do actually. Like I'm not sure if the Godot 4 has a version of it, but you can use different languages in Godot. Like if you integrate them, like some bindings for Rust, for instance. But if you try to do it with Python, you see how much more you have to do for doing the basic stuff compared to GDScript.
Mhm.
So that's what I really like about it.
I probably won't be able to find it now, but there was this cool demo I saw of someone messing around with GDScript where they were like live editing like the code and it was updating what was like in the preview or whatever. It was somewhere
Yeah.
on Twitter. Like I didn't realize it was that integrated into it. You just like change it and it's just automatically just doing the new thing. Like that's really cool.
Yeah,
That
it has. Yeah, it
that
has hot preload. Yeah, yeah.
mhm,
You can you just but boot the project, but you can also do that from the editor itself. You can
mhm,
tweak the values in the inspector, and you
mhm,
will see it there. Yeah, yeah. It's quite good.
mhm,
Like, it shouldn't be like it shouldn't be like the only way of doing stuff, because sometimes with this sort of like interpreted languages you have performance issues, so you have options to do it. Some people has done it like, let's do the performance stuff in C sharp or even in C++, but you can use it as a scripting language and it should be perfectly fine.
mhm.
Like it's not as slow as people say it is. That's a bit frustrating sometimes, because if you do some of those synthetic benchmarks where you do crazy stuff that you would never do in a game,
Mhm.
and oh yeah, this is very slow, it's kind of like, yeah, but when are you gonna be doing that, right?
Mhm.
So it's quite fast enough, but whenever you need something else you can do some other stuff. That's the cool thing.
Mhm. Well, yeah, I'm sure you've heard a lot of sort of, let's say, uninformed takes, especially of late. Like, not just from people who maybe, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Like the people who've just sort of just trying it out. They've not really learned that much about how it works. Or maybe like their entire intention in life, their entire goal in life is to just attack Godot at every second of the day. I've seen some accounts out there that pretty much everything they post about is why the engine is bad, why everything about it is bad. Like I don't understand people like that. Like I get being like critical of it, of things that are legitimately a problem and trying to help it improve, because I'm sure that is helpful. Like, hey, if there's actually some performance issue here with something that is, a reasonable thing that someone would do, like that's something that would need to be addressed. But when it's just going at it for the sake of attacking it, like that's
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, the community is not only in ours, I guess. Like the developers are usually like that, right? Like
Mhm,
this sort of discussions about like what's best in like theoretically or stuff like that.
mhm,
But there's also, yeah, there's some misconceptions that I've seen like throughout the years that are maybe they were maybe true like 2 3 years ago,
mhm.
but they are not true anymore, but people keep repeating them,
That is a
which
really common trend
we
in
know
open
that,
source.
yeah, eventually will go away, like after enough. Like there's a lot of people saying like it's impossible to get your games on consoles, and it's kind of like, why am I playing Godot games in my Switch, right? It's kind of like, if this is impossible, why can I do this, right? And I think that with time, those sort of things are gonna like just go away. But we appreciate a lot of the criticism, and most of it, I believe, in the community, it's been quite welcoming to. Of course, I know that people are gonna be like, oh yeah, I was critical about it, and I'm not a part of it anymore because they were really rude to me or whatever. But it's not usually like the dynamic of the project, and that's something that attracted me at the beginning, because I actually could go in there, I could talk with the people who were working on it, and they changed their minds when we were talking, or I changed my mind, and it was very welcoming to see those sort of like, you know, the reality of making a game is that it might be super different from my to your experience.
Mhm.
Like our needs can be very different, and this is a general purpose language, a general purpose engine. So that's also another thing. Like you see takes from people that are on the AAA industry that are for making games that are very specific, or very like, it's like a Call of Duty sort of game. And yeah, maybe for those sort of games, those things make sense. But for a general purpose, that you need to make like a racing game, a first-person shooter, like a strategy top-down, a 2D, like you need to make some compromises in some areas.
Mhm.
But the good thing about it, which this is not usually the case, is that Godot is open source. So you can go in and you can make your own fork, and you can modify those areas that you don't like.
Mhm.
And that's some flexibility that nobody else offers you. And when I see people complaining about some aspects of the project now, I feel like they are complaining to us as if we were a company,
Mhm.
as if we were like an institution that will be deciding what will be and what not, instead of just being part of the community and making those changes.
Mhm.
Not, you don't have to be a programmer to propose those sort of changes, because you can make the proposal and somebody else can implement it if it makes sense. And you know just the fact that you can do that, I think it's amazing, and it's something that differentiates open source with closed source, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
um, and yeah, I think there's also this shift in people. And maybe I'm going a little bit on a rant, but it's, the game industry, if you compare it to the other industries, is a bit behind in terms of open source
Mhm.
awareness. If you do websites, or if you do anything like that, everything is open source. The library used in the front end, in the back end, on the server, like everything, this full stack is open source, even if it's from a huge company or whatever. If you do that in video games, it's the opposite. Like everything is proprietary, everything is like very close. So I think people are not used to it yet, and hopefully with Godot it will be like a reintroduction of the concepts, and like the benefits that we can get of collaborating in something together, because you know you can modify parts of the engine, and we are starting to include parts from other open source projects that are really good, that are
Mhm.
better than our own implementations. And I can see in the future that this will be like the editor that you use, and people plug their own stuff on it.
Mhm.
And that's something you cannot do with Unity, or I mean, you can do it with Unreal, I guess, but everybody I spoke with didn't want to really mess with the C++ in it. So that's another topic, I guess. But yeah, I went a little bit on a tangent, but yeah.
No, I get what you're saying there. Like I've worked some web dev jobs before, and it's kind of interesting because in that space, nobody touches anything unless it's open source. Like you might get away with like a proprietary database, but that's pretty much the only thing that someone's going to accept. Like the rest of your stack, like you build everything, all of your libraries come from npm. You've got all these like open source Python libraries and all these other libraries, like, and then like in game dev, pretty much the only things that are open source are like, I guess if you use Blender for your modeling,
Yeah,
yeah, like Blender, that's pretty much it.
yeah. I mean, yeah, Blender is quite popular, but it's still not the industry standard. It will be, because you cannot compete with open source. Might be slower, but at the end of the day, it will be. But yeah, no, like the these people, I spoke with many CTOs from startups and companies about like why are you using or why do you prefer open source, and they told me also like when I leave this job and I find a new one, I don't want to have to relearn or
Yeah.
use a
Yeah.
completely different stack. If we release everything we do in open source, we can keep using it in any other company or anything like that. There's also like this community that builds around those tools and things like that that always amplifies the possibilities of a single team working on it.
Mhm.
But if you are now in a game studio, you don't have those sort of things. I guess Unity was the standard for smaller studios. Like everyone knows that you learn that on the university and all that. But you can see what happens when you depend everything on a proprietary like engine, right? Like at any time, anything can change. Um, and also like I feel like we're in a moment in video games where we always try to compare it with the past, but we never been here. Games are bigger than ever. They require more and more people. They are very complicated, and that's why we were seeing a lot of studios that had their own in-house engine going to solutions like Unreal,
Mhm.
because also you can get more like hire more talent that already knows the engine, and you can get stuff like that. Because right now it's starting to be a bit impossible to even develop your own technologies.
Mhm.
Like, of course, if you're making a small game, yes, that makes sense. Might make sense for your studio, but the advantages of general purpose engines is this, right? Like a lot of people can know it, and then you can tweak it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah,
I
I
think.
think Godot will play a role in that being the open source platform.
Mhm. I think a lot of these, especially smaller studios, are starting to notice that they're kind of building their career on a castle with a like. They're building their career. How I can't. Man, what? Why do I think? They are building their career on a mountain of sand. There we go. Something like that. You know what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say. The base is not
yeah,
stable.
yeah,
You know where I'm going with this. Um,
yeah,
yeah, they're realizing that at any point in time, the tools that they rely on can just be taken out from under them, and there's not really anything they can do about it. Now, Unity, the Unity case is really interesting. Now, Unreal has come out and said that if we update our TOS, you don't have to accept it, and you can just stick on that version. I don't know. So the thing is, they haven't done anything like Unity, so I don't know if in the future they try to pull something in a similar way, whether that would actually be the case. They certainly are using it right now to obviously do free marketing, but in the end, it's unclear what would actually happen until something in a similar vein sort of happens on the Unreal side as well. But at least on the Unity side, people, they realize yeah, at any point in time, the deal can change, and you just basically have to accept it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because they say you can stay in the old version of it, which is true, you can. But then when iOS requires new stuff for your SDK and you need to update that, just you have to upgrade to the new version. Same, I believe, is with the consoles. If you want to export to console, you cannot use like the old versions, or like it will eventually like run out of time. So eventually you'll have to upgrade to the latest license that they have. And the case with Unreal, I think it's different also because the company is privately owned,
Mhm.
so they don't have like shareholders that want them to do whatever. Like that's an upgrade, but still, it's still something that right now they are very lucky to have Fortnite printing money for them, but when that money runs out, you don't know what can happen. And the cost of developing an editor and an engine is very, very high.
Mhm.
So if they really need to base their business model around the editor itself, they might need to make some adjustments,
Mhm.
which are fine, right? Like it's not that you shouldn't be paying for software or anything like that, but it's a bit for me nerve wracking because when you're making a game, it's probably like gonna be like the next 2, 3, or 4 years of your life, and it's hard to predict what's going to happen.
Mhm.
And if the licenses change midway, then everything can be in the air for a
Mhm.
while. So that's the advantages of using something that you know is gonna be like free and open source. Like you don't have to think about that. There's other things that you have to think about, but generally speaking, the license is not gonna change. Like you're not gonna have to suddenly pay royalties or a revenue fee or like an install fee or anything like that.
What license is Godot under, by the way? I'm actually not.
It's MIT.
Okay. So someone could decide that they want to take like a proprietary version of the engine in like a whole nother direction if they wanted to then.
Yeah, yeah. You can rename it and sell it and say this is like I don't know, like yeah, my engine, and yeah, they can do that. The license is permissive.
Well, even yeah, even
That's
if
something that
sorry, go on.
no, that's something that you don't get out of licenses like GPL, which they have their advantages, but like I think that it makes sense for Godot because you don't have that like concern of like extending it and not being able to also like keep part of it for yourself if you want to, if your studio needs to, or anything like that.
Well, yeah, even if I was gonna say, like, even if at some point the foundation was like, "Hey, we are just going to have like we're gonna have future versions of Godot be developed like as a proprietary thing." There's always still gonna be that like there's still going to be that MIT version that someone could decide to take over and continue developing. Even if the main focus of Godot becomes like a proprietary version, like that's still going to be there that anyone else can get involved with.
Yeah, but it's not even in our
Well, yeah, it's sort of like just
mission
theoretical.
statements,
Yeah.
right? There are some companies that formed around Godot. For
Mm-hmm.
instance, there's one called Ramattack who offers something like that. They have like a specialized version of Godot for exporting to mobile,
Okay.
like version like Android and iOS. And that if it works for them, that's okay. They also contribute part of that to the engine, and they are
Huh.
sponsoring the engine.
Okay.
But for us, it's not like a goal at any time. And yeah, theoretically we could do like a dual license kind of thing, but also like I don't think that any of us in the community are even interested about it. Like I just like all the people that are working at the moment were passionate about it, and I think that if we would do something like that, they will just not work with us anymore. Like even myself, like I wouldn't be interested, and I don't know what can be offered on top of it. And yeah, it seems like a very weird idea. Like I've seen the conversation like, oh yeah, Godot can do this in the future, they can change the license or anything like that, but it doesn't really make any sense. Like it would be really hard to try to make a business out of that. But
Well,
if there are some things that we can implement legally to prevent it, and you have some ideas, I'm happy to, like
I
implement any safeguards or anything like that.
uh have good people running the project. Have good people on the
Yeah, I
foundation.
mean, yeah, that's like also the fact that all the people that got here are also passionate about open source. It's what makes the difference, right? Like it's not our motivation. And this is sometimes a problem because monetarily we are not that. We were very lucky lately. We announced the Godot Development Fund, where you can send money to the project, kind of like in a Patreon way, and we have the platform, so we have to pay a lot of fees. So that's great. And with the recent Unity news, a lot of people jumped in and started donating. So that's great for us to be more sustainable and being able to pay the contractors and be more sustainable in general. And we don't have the means to offer really really good salaries. So people who are working at Godot at the moment is because they want to, but as soon as they get an offer from a AAA studio, it's impossible for us to compete with those salaries, right? If you have a person that's a pro doing like, let's say, physics or something like that, there's not too many of them in the world even to have them. So it's hard for an open source project to compete with that in terms of they can come, they can say, okay, we can hire you, we can give you 300K a year, and that's it. But the people who stayed at the project are the ones who are passionate about it, myself included, and it's I think an ideological also like endeavor. It's not only like a monetary thing, right? Like working for a project that is open source or anything like that.
Mhm.
And we don't want to have that structure that some other open source project have, where there's the private company, like you have like kind of like Canonical, and then you have like uh, we don't want to do anything like that. So the people who are now working on Godot are just working on Godot, and we don't plan to
Mhm.
start a business. Some people that are on the Godot Foundation have started their own businesses to provide services for Godot, but there will never be like a Godot company, let's say.
Yeah, I'm noticing that with console support, one of the things listed in the documentation is Lone Wolf technology, uh,
Mhm.
started by one of the co-founders of Godot.
Yeah, Lone Wolf is by one of the co-founders. Then there's W4 Games, which another like of the co-founders also did. Ram Attack is also like by one of the persons who've been on the project for a long time. Then you
Mhm.
have Pineapple Works, who did a lot of porting for many of the popular games in Godot for consoles. So you have a lot of companies that are around the ecosystem, and they have their own business model
Mhm.
and everything like that. And they deal with the stuff that we don't want to deal, because as soon as you get into those things, you need to start dealing with proprietary code, like libraries that are like just not, the mobile situation. You have all these SDKs like for ads, for tracking, for all those things. We don't want to spend even a single hour of development time on anything like that.
Mhm.
We understand that for some people that's very important for their games, and some people have developed libraries to include Google Ads or ads from Facebook or whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
But we are not going to be providing those because that's not part of our mission. So that's where those companies come in, and it's great that they exist, because that also makes the people who are making games like being able to use those services. But we don't have to deal with that. It's not what we want to do.
Right. So one thing you mentioned a while back was the console support situation. So you
Yep.
can do you can get a game working on a console that is made in Godot, but the engine itself doesn't, from my understanding, natively support that.
Yeah, it's
Like you don't have
I think
direct
there's
support for
two.
the SDKs in there.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also two parts of it, which one part is the fact that you might need to make adjustments to your game.
Mhm.
That's a big part of porting that nobody considers,
Sure.
which needs to happen. The other part is the having the SDK access and all that. And we tried many times with different ways of trying to talk with the consoles, like people, like, can you please give us that opportunity to publish this and that? But they are not really happy about you publishing those sort of code in a way that people can access to it, and it's open source and things like that. So it's kind of conflicting with our way of working.
Mhm.
I think things are gonna change in the future, but I think that now with the interest that there is now in Godot and a lot of the people like working on it, we're gonna see some changes in making it easier. But there's also the fact that Godot is open source. You can technically, if you're like skilled enough, you could do the port yourself.
Mhm.
I know this is like just a pipe dream for a solo developer, right? But it can be done. If you have a small kind of game, you can make the adjustments you need to the engine and do it.
Mhm.
So I think it's more like a complaint or like a request from people that are not that experienced, and they just want to have a button that says export to Xbox. And even if we could have that button, it would not be that easy because of the first part I told you, right? Like you need to make sure that you comply with all the requirements that they ask you, that the controls work properly, that you display like the inputs as they should, everything like that. So I think it's a request from people that are not that experienced.
Yeah.
But I also understand that it should be easier to just get your games there, because it's a big market, and it's also like the goal for many people, like grew up playing Nintendo games, and they want to see their game in the Switch because it's a Nintendo console, and the feeling that you get from that is different than exporting it to Steam, let's say.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think it's gonna change with time and it's gonna get easier.
We're even just doing stuff like on PC, like exporting it to Windows and exporting to Linux. Like, there are some game devs out there, for some reason, will put a Linux version of their game on Steam and then never maintain it. And within 2 updates, it is completely unplayable.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, one cool thing about Godot is that most of the developers are using Linux themselves, so like the Linux support is very, very good. And right now, with all the Steam Deck players,
Yeah.
you're gonna see like that's a great advantage. You can just export it to Linux and it works on Steam Decks with no problem. So that's quite good. Maybe if in the future more of the platforms are sort of like the Steam Deck, that will happen. I'm not sure that will happen, but one can dream, right?
One can certainly dream. So, I guess we can start getting more into the Unity stuff.
Yeah.
One thing I did notice, like, very quickly is there were a lot of big names that... Like, I noticed there was, like, a big donation from, it was Relogic, the Terraria guys.
Relogic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that sort of came out of nowhere. Like, I did not expect that to happen. Like, besides that one, like, did you notice any other, like, big names show up? Anyone, like, anything notable after, like, that whole Unity situation?
We are in conversations with many people. I will not want to
No,
throw them under the bus and say their
sure,
names
sure.
just in case they decide not to support the project. But
Anything
yeah,
that,
like
like, I mean,
many.
that's already, like, gone through. Like, obviously, if there are talks, can't say that, but, like, anything that's, like, publicly happened already.
Everything that's public already is there on the website. It was mostly like what you see in like Relogic or stuff like that. I don't think there was any other like big studio like Relogic that did any sort of donation like that. But yeah. Um, but I think like with this kind of wake up call, a lot of people that heard about Godot and they had it in the back of their minds as this open source engine. It's kind of like they finally gave it a try and they saw that it was actually something they could use. So like I wish I could tell you more names of people that
No.
are just talking with us at the moment, but a lot of people, they really consider it, they tried it, and they thought it was gonna be like the idea, like the popular idea that people have like 2-3 years ago, sort of mental picture of what Godot is. But it's not that, right? Like it's completely like new in terms of like what you have in the version 4. And yeah, a lot of people just tried it for that week, like 2 weeks that all the drama was going on, and they started sharing stuff on Twitter, which like incentivized more people to try it and give it a go. Because one thing, we are very scrappy in terms of we don't have like super nice looking demos because everything is kind of like with a bit of programmer art, the kind of. Some studios were able to make some demos that we use a lot, like the GD Quest demos that we show a lot. But now that you get people that are, pros and they have their own like nice quality assets and stuff like that, they give the engine a go and everything looks amazing. And it's kind of like, yeah, it could always look like that. We just didn't have the skill sets to make demos for you to to understand it. But yeah, that's also like motivating other people. And yeah, I think for most games that are out there that are indie games is a viable option, and when they try it they see why. And it's a bit scary to jump from your engine to another one. Like as we said before with the asset store stuff and all that, you already invested thousands of dollars on assets. You already like spent years of your life working on it. You developed tools for it. You did a lot of things that it's not something that you would say on a weekend. Let's swap engines, right? It's kind of like you don't do that. But now that you have that kind of wake up call, a lot of people tried it, and yeah, I think it's the moment.
That's something a lot of people don't consider as well. Like, there's a lot of stuff when you're doing, like, obviously if you're just like messing around, you never actually made like a project that you're selling for money. Like, it's fine. You can jump engine to engine. But when you're an established studio, you're going to have like developer pipelines. You're going to have your own internal tooling you've made to make the whatever workflow you're trying to do actually work well with that engine. And you might be able to get it to work in a similar way, maybe better with Godot. But it's not going to be just like, hey guys, I'm a Godot expert now.
Yeah. No. Like it's gonna be like a learning curve,
Mhm,
and also as there's so many people using it for so different things,
mhm,
we're gonna find those areas where maybe things were not as polished as we would like,
mhm.
and maybe none of the big like studios like are using Godot were using those areas, but the new ones will, and they will say like, "What's this?" And then
Mhm.
we're gonna have to work on that. But yeah, no, it's a whole different beast every time you go to a different engine.
But I think having these cool demos, like the one I've got up right now, it's one of the ones you shared. It's this like FPS game. It's like really stylized. Um, that Skull game is now made in Godot. If you remember
Yeah,
reposting that one, like this is a super cool looking demo, and like
yeah,
it shows off like the different, because a lot of people have this weird idea, especially, oh my god, especially with Unreal. Like there are so many people who think that because a game is made in a certain engine, it has to look a certain way. Like,
yeah,
yes, if you're doing
yeah,
everything
yeah.
with the default, like Unreal especially, because it has so many powerful, like it's powerful lighting, all of the like the store it has, like you can make. There's a lot of AAA games that look exactly the same. But like that's not because of the engine. It's because they have no artistic vision. Like you can do super cool things with any engine.
Yeah, that school game that you mentioned, like
Mhm,
that was being done like I think over the course of 8 days on
mhm.
stream,
Oh wow.
and you can go into the stream and see how he did it,
Mhm,
and I was just like looking at it, like I was just amazed at the game looks very similar to this Devil Daggers, I think is the name of the other one where you shoot skulls. Anyway,
yeah.
but yeah, the style of that game like is much like polished, like the one that I shared. I think it's more unique, I guess.
Mhm.
But
Well, there was
I
the
mean, I'm
lighting
amazed that
demos and stuff you showed as well that people were
yeah,
talking about.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, like having like nice things to show it always help for adoption.
mhm,
Like you can get those sorts of results. Hopefully in the future we'll have some more people in the team that will be able to make nice demos for people to use and then explore. But this is also like a call for action. Like everything is open source. All of our demos are open source and you can contribute to them. So if you want to make them pretty, that's something you can do. You don't have to just make a new and you can make one of the ugly ones look better. Yeah.
yeah. Look, I'm sure there are some programmers out there that have like great artistic skills as well. But
Yeah.
I've seen some user interfaces that were designed where there is no user interface design guidelines, and you just let programmers do whatever they want. And sometimes it works, but a lot of the time it doesn't. UI guidelines are very
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. That's also the same, with Godot as well. Like at the beginning, I think things were smaller and easier to manage in terms of you could pretty much know all the dialogues, all the pop-ups, menus, everything, and kind of how things are done. So when you implement something new,
Mhm,
you just do it in the same way as it was done before.
mhm,
But now it's so big that I'm starting to find inconsistencies here and there. And
mhm,
that's, I started a design team. So if you join our developer chat, which is on our website, you can find it.
mhm,
There's a design channel where we are trying to find those inconsistencies, make a proper design language for everything, and trying to improve like the general look of it,
mhm,
which is very important. But there's so many moving pieces, different people working in different areas, that sometimes is a bit harder. But that's Godot has a very nice UI system, which is the same that you can use for your games. So the editor is built with the same nodes that you would use then in your
Ah,
games if you want to.
that's cool.
So every time we improve the control nodes, which are their names, like the UI elements, we also are improving the UI nodes in Godot itself. So like you can build nice stuff, and if we can improve that, I think it will be a very nice fresh paint right on the project. I am annoyed myself at some of the dialogues that are different, and it's kind of like we show the error under the input field, and in others we show them in other areas. So it would be super nice to just do like a pass on all those and see where those inconsistencies are and improve them. But yeah, you know,
Well, it's
for
all.
the demos, for the game demos, it's just the important thing is the technology, and
Mhm.
then like we have talented people that have made amazing stuff, but I don't think like it makes a lot of sense for them to just spend a lot of time on making it look nice if there's so many things to do as well.
No, no, that's totally fair. Um, that's actually really cool. I didn't know that. I guess the Godot UI was made in Godot. Like that's super cool. Um, I guess it acts as like a
Yeah,
demo
yeah.
of what can be done with it, like that.
Yes, yeah, yeah. You can also extend it. So if you make a plugin, you can extend the editor with GDScript and nodes and all that. You can add your own stuff there at the editor. I built a plugin that's for making visual novels. So you have all these sort of like dialogues and characters and all that. There's also like many plugins that just extend the editor a little bit, and that's one of the advantages, right, of having the same sort of system there.
Well, I guess that's yeah. No, that actually makes a lot of sense, and I guess that's why you said before, like it would be cool if it was this like sort of centralized thing that people plugged into as they needed to like build additional functionality. You sort of have like a natural plugin system in Godot because of the fact that it's built in the thing that it is. Like you don't have
Yeah,
to like a lot of projects really struggle to bring in some sort of plugin system. Like GIMP right now is in the process of rewriting their entire plugin system so it actually functions and it exists. But like here, you don't have that issue. Like that's yeah that's super cool. Like I didn't know about that. That's yeah.
yeah, and there's several ways like this. Like extending the editor is quite simple. Everybody can do it. And if you want to extend the engine, there's also like some other ways, like with GD extensions, which is what it's called, which you can, we had like to rewrite the physics system for Godot 4, and unfortunately, it's not as good as we would wanted it to be.
Mhm.
But there's another physics engine which is called Jolt, which was developed by somebody that I believe they worked in Guerrilla Games, and I think it's the physics engine that they use in Horizon, in one of those Horizon games, and it's also MIT. So a user through GD extension was able to just merge it,
Mhm.
like create the extension for Godot, so you can use Jolt in Godot, like the physics engine, and that's we are thinking that it will probably be like in future versions, it's going to be the default physics engine because it's much better than ours. But that would be another way of extending the editor with new capabilities. You
Mhm.
can make a new physics for your game in particular if it's a very physics-based game, or some other people has done it for making a lot of visual like taxing effects. Right? If you want to make like a Vampire Survivors kind of game, you really need every little performance you can get to show as many stuff on the screen as possible. You can do it with an extension,
So you say
and
that,
yeah,
but the original game engine was an HTML game engine.
yes,
And
yeah, 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 yeah.
I
It's
don't know how that game functioned, let alone ran relatively well.
yeah. I was surprised to. I thought it was Game Maker. Honestly, when I played it, it had that Game Maker feel,
Mhm.
but then it was like HTML, what?
Yeah.
JavaScript, what? Yeah, 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 yeah. It was
I believe
interesting.
recently he released the C++ engine update. So like most of the performance issues should be gone now because there's no like yes, there's a lot of particle effects and all that, but like it's still a pixel art game. Like the only reason it ran so badly is because it was in a terrible engine. Like, I'm sure it's cool that an engine like that exists, but like, I think we can all agree that a JavaScript engine is not the most optimal thing to be writing your games in.
No, but maybe that's the thing, right? Like, it might not be the most optimal thing for those sort of games, but for 80% of the other games that you're gonna play like that,
Sure, if
yes.
it's like
And
a
that's
web-based Bejeweled clone or something, like, yeah, we'll play fine with that.
exactly, yeah. That's the thing, right? You have to use the right tools for the job, and in this case, yeah, like
It's not 100,000
Vampire
particle
Survivors.
effects on the screen.
I think they rewrote everything in Unity. Like that's the thing for them,
Was
and
it
that's
Unity?
one of the things. I think yeah, they ported it to
I thought
Unity.
it
That's
was.
one of the things that you find, right? Like it's kind of like
Oh, it is Unity. Why do I think?
now they changed the license.
Why do I think it was C
Hmm?
plus? It was something in C plus plus. I don't know. Maybe I misread something. Yeah. This it's previously it was in an engine called Phaser, a
Yeah,
desktop
it's quite
engine.
good.
I'm sure it's a great tool. Look. Don't get me wrong. I don't hate like that this exists. It's just not suitable for a game that has as much going on as Vampire Survivors has.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's incredible to have those sort of games. Yeah, there's one Vampire Survivors like game which was very successful for a long time now. Brotato, which is made in Godot,
Oh,
and
yes, that one. Wait, is it?
it's also like, yeah, it's made in Godot,
Huh.
and
I didn't know that.
yeah, it's very popular on Steam Deck. It's always on the top of the charts that they release. Like, it's always right there.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, no, that game also, like the developer was using Game Maker before,
Mhm.
and I met him during the GDC because we had a booth at GDC with some games that you could play, and he told me that he used my tutorials to do the transition to God. So like that's quite nice to hear.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, it's awesome to see that those are still useful, like all this time later.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were like me stuck in the old version of game maker because of the license,
Mhm.
and it's a great engine for artists specifically. That's why I liked it and I didn't get into the other ones,
Mhm.
because yeah, like you have a lot of tools to just make the game, and you will see that game maker games are usually very pretty in terms of 2D stuff and all that. But yeah, like I think, yeah, I don't want to comment too much on game maker itself, like I think they're making a lot of efforts also to start doing more open source stuff,
Mhm.
and hopefully we find a way to collaborate in the future in terms of making some of the things that we do like just open source for everybody,
Mhm.
and we can share them. But like it's complicated when they are operating under a company like a private company or
Mhm.
things like that. They have to make sure that they have a business to
Yeah.
to run, and yeah, that's the cool thing I believe for us. Like we don't have those sort of things in our mind, right? Like of course donations, that's always on my mind at least. Like how are we gonna get money to pay the contractors to keep the things going? But it's not that we need to find new ways to get money from people,
Mhm.
and that's, I think it gives you a lot of peace of mind in terms of like you can really be as ethical as you want without compromising the ideas to just maybe charge per install or things like that. Trying to capitalize on games like Vampire Survivors, right? Like those are the games who were going to be affected the most. But yeah, the
Because
cool thing is about
Vampire Survivors is
donations.
like super cheap. Like how much is it? It's like
Yeah, yeah, it's
five US
those were the
dollars.
games that were yeah. Mm.
That I love Vampire Survivors. I'm so happy the dev he's set for a while with how much was made off, even with how little he was charging for the game. Like that has kind of set him for like a long time. If he just wants to chill and not do anything, like I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
every indie game dev sort of wishes that their game becomes like a Vampire Survivors, a Hades, a Hollow Knight, Terraria, Minecraft. Like obviously those are like extreme exceptions, but like just one of these, like even just Halls of Torment, like that capped out, I think at like 30,000 players or something. Like, and that's a lot of people. Like that's a lot of people
The
who've
Halls
bought
of
your game.
Torment. Halls of Torment is also Godot. Is Godot 4.
Wait, is it?
Yes, it's in our showcase as well, like in our website. But yeah,
Wait,
yeah, it's yeah, we're getting there. Like it wasn't that common to see so many Godot games lately, but like before. But now, like if you get in there, you have many high-profile games that are Godot games, and
I had
yeah,
no
he
idea.
also.
Okay, what else?
It's nice that you mentioned that because I forgot one mentioning Potato because it was like.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the showcase. I'm gonna see if is there anything else I noticed in here.
uh,
Let's.
Case of the Golden Idol, maybe.
Don't know that one.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, I'm not seeing anything else that I notice here. But
Cassette Beasts, maybe.
yeah, I don't recognize it. I'm sure someone is gonna say they've played at least one of these games. I had no idea
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was... Okay, that's really cool. Like I love Halls of Torment. It's a great game. Well, yeah, I guess there
Yeah,
are
I
like...
tried. I made efforts to not play as much as the other ones because I didn't want to spend so many hours. I played a few hours and I said like, yes, I can play this for another 100 hours. Let's just not open it again.
That's probably the safest thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
This
one of those games, right? Like Factorio. You look into the abyss and it's like the abyss look at you and it's kind of like, no,
I
I don't
I
have time for this.
I can't do Factorio. I there's too Factorio is too complex for me. I can't. I so the problem with
I mean,
Factorio is I need to have like the wiki open the as long as I'm playing it. Like that's not what I'm looking for a game. I just want to
yeah.
like turn my brain off and kill things. Like I'm playing a lot of Armored Core 6 right now. Like Armored Core 6,
Oh.
I don't need to think. Just dodge the exploding thing. Shoot the big mech. They die. That's all that needs to matter.
Yeah,
And
but you sometimes, yeah, those games are great. Yeah,
Mhm.
like just goes like you get into this meditation state while
Yeah.
playing that it's just auto playing, and that's great. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Have you played also maybe Dome Keeper?
Dome Keeper. No, I
That's
don't
also
think
quite
so.
popular,
What is that?
and that can also get you into this meditation state in terms of like you're just mining and just going.
Oh, that looks pretty cool,
Quite
actually.
nice.
I think I might have heard of this one, but I've not played it. It's got a neat art style.
Yeah, I recommend it. It's quite nice.
Yeah, right now, if I want to think when I'm playing a game, Baldur's Gate's got too much of my attention right now.
Yeah, such a good game. Like I got to the third act recently, and I'm there. It's just too big, also, right? Like I had so many plans for the past 2 weeks that I couldn't actually do. Um, but yeah, like Baldur's Gate is it's amazing. Yeah, like I like narrative games. That's why I also like focus on making a plugin for making narrative games and stuff like that called Dialogic. Is and I enjoy this, right? Like the interactions between characters is something I really enjoy. I know it's something reserved more for like the not safe for work community. They have been developing a lot more in that area, and I like seeing these sort of things coming into more like the mainstream AAA because it's so common to just decapitate people, kill people in so many different ways. And then it's kind of like, oh no, but two characters like fucking each other is just too much for the audience, right?
I love the
And
way they showed off, like when they first showed off the romance
yeah,
it's like bare sex. Like of all the scenes you
yes,
could show, like that's the one you go with.
They're just brilliant. But I wish we see more of those sort of things, um, those topics at least. You know, it doesn't have to be like just a not safe for work kind of game. Just had to have some elements, and I like the interaction between characters in many games, which is usually like the nice part, and then it's interrupted by like a 30 or 40 minutes of killing people nonstop, and then you get the nice part again. So yeah, Baldur's Gate is great.
I think one of the more recent games that kind of changed that trend was Witcher 3. Like, there's just a scene where, like, Geralt's naked. It's like, okay. Like, it's not like making a big deal of it. It's just like, yeah, sometimes people don't wear clothes.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I wish that that's something that comes more like often in the future, because I think it's more like a European sort of lens for
Mm-hmm.
the making the games. We are so subject to the like American view of what's acceptable or
Yep,
not in
yep.
media, that I really like getting more input from the other studios, from other places that we really need, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is not something that's too scandalous for people in other cultures, but for Americans it might be. So that's okay. But if we get more studios like City Project Red or Larian or things like that making games with a different sort of lens, that would be ideal.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think just honestly, one trend that I'm really enjoying is let's not have American voice actors for every single game. Like, yes, I know you like there's a lot of them, but like there are other people as well. Like I've been playing Final Fantasy 16, not a single American character. It's nice. It's a nice change of pace. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
or like,
yeah. No, like
go on.
we're getting a lot of like voice acting lately that is high quality in different languages. Like, I'm originally from Argentina. I lived a long time in Spain, but then in the rest of Europe. So sometimes I enjoy like seeing nice like Spanish voiceover, and like the industry wasn't that good so long ago, but now it's kind of more like of a standard that you're not only going to add the subtitles but also like the voiceover. And I think it's quite nice when they pay attention to details, and they also pick people from different areas to use different dialects or like different accents. I think that's great of the new globalized world, right? Like,
Mhm,
it comes with a lot of bad things, but the good things as well.
mhm.
Yeah, I like a lot of American media, but I agree with the terms of like when it's everything Americanized and everything gets a bit tiring.
Yeah.
Like, appreciate it, but in Cyberpunk makes sense. In maybe in other places, maybe you can do with something else, right?
Well, also not just having like you often see like, hey, there's an Australian character in this game, or hey, there's like a Russian character in the game, or like any other culture. It's like, and it's just like that one character that's there as just like they're there to be like the joke character, the trope character, whatever you want to call it. But like when it's something that's entirely set around like in a different culture with a different style of approaching a game, like there is a lot of interesting concepts out there, which I'm sure, like, there's a recent trend of a lot of like Chinese RPGs we're seeing actually making it to the West, and it's a very different like culture being brought to the game. Like we see a lot of like when we see a lot of Asian games, usually it's like the South Korean perspective or it's the Japanese perspective, but there is a lot of mythology that's not really touched on in many video games from the Chinese aspect. And like we're seeing some really cool things like what's is it Black Myth? I think is the game that hasn't there's yeah, I think that was one of them. But like there's a lot of cool
I
stuff
don't
that can be
know.
explored there that just hasn't
Yeah,
really been touched on.
yeah. No, no. I agree, and you know, I think also
Yeah,
like
Black
just
Myth
to
was what I'm
plug
thinking of.
Godot, Godot in, like
Mhm.
having the tools to do proper localization, it's very important. I really like the tools in Godot. You can check them out. That's the plug. But yeah, like lately, I think that it's been important to see it also, like as I said before, like just having people that cares do those sort of work is very important.
Mhm.
There has been a lot of things going on in terms of like the translators, a lot of controversies, which I really liked to not see again. Like, in some of the translators, like they are never added to the credits because they use like a translation company and they don't allow it and things like that. I hope the industry changes for the better in that area.
Mhm.
But yeah, getting like different sort of games. That's why I also believe that some indie games found a lot of success, because they don't have to go through all these filters from publishers and from all that to really show you like an aspect of like a culture of a different place that you are not familiar with.
Mhm.
And yeah, if you go to the mainstream, everything is kind of like you expect it to be in a certain way. And we build a lot of mental models for understanding this sort of games, like Japanese games or like even anime. You have all these anime glasses that you accept certain things because you already know the culture a little bit,
Mhm.
but then you find something that's different. It's kind of blows your mind because you've never been into those sort of concepts. But yeah,
Mhm.
it's great. I really like playing games from everywhere.
Mhm. No, I absolutely agree. Um, I guess we should probably tie it back into Godot somehow. Uh,
Yeah, it's a gaming podcast now.
look, I half the time I don't even address the main topic for the first hour of the show. People expect this at this point. If I just go on some random tangent, that's just what happens here. So, I guess for anyone who hasn't been following the Unity stuff, they did actually post like a update to the situation. From my understanding, it's 2.5% of your revenue, or let's see, what was it? Somewhere in here. Yeah, 2.5% revenue share,
Yeah.
or the runtime fee, which are now self-reported.
Hmm.
I think the big concern a lot of people had is how were they going to do the data collection? Because it wasn't self-reported initially. Like that's where it got really weird. Like, and they said, we will have measures to counteract people maliciously, like that's a whole weird concept that would have been brought, like maliciously installing a game to cause damage to a company.
Yeah.
Like doesn't even make any sense. But
Yeah.
it I think they could have avoided a lot of the controversy if they just said it was self-reported. Like, yeah, people weren't going to be happy from the start, but the like automatically collecting the data, I think, was the big weird part.
Yeah, yeah, that's always a concern, right? Like the telemetry that we are very used to have in everything, and that's something I also maybe don't see people complaining a lot. They complain, "Oh, I don't want this to track me." We're very used to having social media. Oh, social media is tracking you, all that. That's bad. But then you're using software that is tracking every movement you do and like every install you do, and you don't never complain, which I think it's something we should care a little bit more about.
Mhm.
But yeah, like how are they gonna make sure that you are installing a game and it's like a unique computer or anything like that? I think they brought the concepts from mobile, which usually works sort of like by fingerprinting
Mhm.
users, and like kind of tying that up with a single person. I think they were thinking about mobile, I guess, first in those proposals of new
Which makes
money.
sense because it is
uh,
like the biggest part of the gaming market at this point, like by far.
It is, yeah, and it's kind of like their own, expertise because since they merged with this other company, Iron Source was the name.
That
Um,
sounds right. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean that's what they know the most. The problem is you have all these so-called premium games that are not like mobile games, like games that you usually install on a console or on a desktop computer, and they have a different model of operating, of selling. Like they are not, most of them are not like free to play or things like that. You pay once and that's it. And as I said before, like it's one of the gambles that you have when you go with one of those solutions, proprietary solutions, right? Like they can change those terms at any time and you have to abide by them.
Mhm.
And yeah, maybe they are not even legal, but it's really hard to make um, to face them like legally, right? Like
Mhm.
to pay lawyers or stuff like that. It's not something that anyone can do. And the conditions that they announced recently are better for most users, and I really like that a lot of games that they were very close to getting finished, they will be able to be finished, and
Mhm.
they're not gonna be in risk of any of this. So that's a great thing, right? To hear like we don't like the fact that people are now struggling or like seeing all these sorts of issues coming at them. Like it really sucks. We have a lot of friends in the industry that are just working really hard on a game in Unity, and it's really bad to see something like this. But even if the terms are better now, nothing really prevents them to change them in the future. Right now, it could be this. In a few years, it could be 5%, and then maybe 10%, because at the end of the day, they are a public traded company. They need to make a profit, and they will do everything they can to make a profit, and that's their goal. I think that's the worst part, that the worst thing that happened here, right? Like you can clearly see that there's no interest in the game making part. There's interest in the money making part from their side, which makes sense as a publicly traded company, but as a user or as a consumer of their product, it's really bad. Like you're at the whims of whatever they need to get on their reports. So I mean, it really sucks. Like, of course, it was a very positive thing for us to get the extra attention, the extra funding, and all that. But it's not something that we want to see like in the industry in general, right? Because a lot of people also follow the sort of models that make sense in this business. So if they see that this makes sense, you might see other engines or other services
Hmm.
implementing similar things to this, and this is going to be worse for everybody. You can start to see that maybe if this works, the installation fees and everything like that, you could see it going to maybe Twitch. Like if you have this many amount of users, you're costing us more, so you're gonna have to pay, like we are gonna pay you less, or like you don't know the ramifications, but
Hmm.
generally speaking, if you're just removing rights from people, like it's really hard to get them back. And I wouldn't want to be in their situation of having a game in Unity or having a lot of services for Unity games and now like losing trust in that company. But
Hmm.
it is the system where we are living in, I guess.
I think the weird thing with Unity is they kind of approached it like, you know how there's been a lot of AAA studios as of late who release a game that is just broken beyond like any reasonable doubt. Like you had Gollum, you had Redfall, you had Forspoken was just a bad game, and then they put out this like video game apology. It's like, we're sorry, we made a bad game. It seems like, I guess, Unity tried to approach it in a similar way. Like, we're sorry, we'll do better. And it's like, that works when you're dealing with a video game purchase, because you pay whatever it is in your local currency. We go to the US price, $60 for a new game. You buy the game. If it's a bad game, like, you lost $60, like, whatever. Like, that's obviously a big deal for some people, but it's $60. But if you're building your career, like, you're building the next 4 years on this engine, and now you're in a position where you don't think you can trust it, like that's a
Yeah.
much more serious position. And even with this change back, like, I could see companies that are like Unity specialists sticking with Unity, but if someone is, getting into this, or in a position where they're already thinking of changing from Unity anyway, like, I think the long-term effects we still haven't seen. Like, yeah, like, people are kind of happier now, but like, I don't know what's gonna happen in a couple of years from now after new projects have been settled, whether people keep, like, they just, they trust Unity now, they just keep going with it, or if they start migrating to other engines, whether that be, Unreal, whether that be Godot or anything else that's out there. I think we still have to wait and see what the actual consequences of doing this really are.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be like a ripple effect, like that's gonna be for many years to come. Like you're gonna see it everywhere, and yeah, like a lot of schools are teaching Unity, right? And that's the first
Yeah,
thing that
my
people get
university
introduced to.
had VR courses and its other game dev courses all doing. Actually, they had one course in
Yeah,
Unreal, but most of the rest of it was Unity.
yeah. So that's, even if you ask me, like if I get the usual like relative who has like a kid and they want to get into games in the game industry, of course, like yeah, learn Godot, right? Like learn to try stuff. But if you really want to get a job right now, it's kind of, you have to know Unity. That's where the industry like wants you to do. Now that they really are considering, like, do we want to do this, like do we want to collectively bet all of our like businesses to one company, like you're gonna see the changes everywhere, but it's gonna be slow and it's not gonna be something that happens, like overnight.
Mhm.
um, and yeah, I just hope, like people see the value in different options. And I wouldn't like that now everybody goes to Unreal, which is, like could be the same situation in the future. There's a lot of open source alternatives that you can try, and there's also a lot of things that you can do to just think about the parts of your business that are based on that, and really consider, am I like in the right moment to change or not? Because sometimes it might not make sense, right?
Mhm.
Maybe there's like an audio editing tool that you're using for your job that it's just the best and there isn't any alternative. That's fine, but keeping an eye on it, like, are there gonna be like something where they're like just trying other things? But yeah, no, the ramifications from this are very, very big, and it can be a long time until we really start seeing it, how it looks like. It's also very, very sad to see that there were a lot of people inside fighting for, not having this sort of change, because they understand how game developers work and how
Mhm.
they do things. So, like, everyone that was there because they really like Unity, like the editor, the project, the engine, right? Like, they were not agreeing with this change. And unfortunately, that's how publicly traded companies work. And
Mhm.
if they didn't say anything like this, it will also mean the financial ruin of the company in the long run. I think that that's the biggest thing that happened, like, to Unity when they IPO, when they are like suddenly like a public traded company. Like, there's a shift in priorities, and we all based like the industry around this tool.
Mhm.
And now that tool is maybe not profitable for them. It takes a lot of developers and a lot of money and resources to have the editor just working, like, and the engine and all that. And if it's not making money for them, like, they need to do something about it.
Mhm. Well, you made a good point in there about like the people who are just working on Unity. Like I said a very similar thing when a couple of months back when there was all of this drama with Red Hat and changing the way they were handling their distro like handling the source code. And it's like I know a lot of people that work. I don't know anyone that works at Unity, but I know a lot of people that work at Red Hat. And all of these engineers are great people who are passionate about what they are working on. And I'm sure it's exactly the same at Unity. There are people that work on the engine who just want to make a good engine that everybody can benefit from. But those people aren't the management. Those people aren't the ones who are making the financial decisions that, you know, some people aren't happy with. Like, they are just the engineers who are they're the engineers doing the cool things. They don't really have any say outside of that. Like, they can talk to their direct boss and be like, hey, talk to your direct boss and your boss. Like, but that's pretty much as far as it goes.
Yeah, yeah. It's also, you meet these people, like, it's not that we fight each other, right? Like, we go to any gaming conference, like a game development conference, we're all just mixing and talking
Mhm.
with each other. We all kind of know, maybe not directly, but we have a friend who works with that, and like, everybody kind of knows each other, and we are all there for the games. Like, we want to see cool games, we play games, even us right now chatting, like we were chatting for a while about games just in general, because it's what we like and we want to see more. and if there's a way of making it sustainable, that people can make games in a sustainable way and all that, that's amazing. But once you are a company that needs to have these sort of priorities, Unity had already like 70% of the market, and I mean, yeah, maybe they could push to get 100% of the market, but then what, right? There always need to be more, and that extra, like, how are you gonna get it? Like, I don't know. Let's just start charging for this, for that. Let's try to make. It's how these sort of companies work. So yeah, like people that are passionate and they really like to make games and the technology and all that, they just couldn't like fight enough inside to make the change that needed to
I,
happen.
I don't know if you're hearing it going by, but the fire truck, whatever it was.
Yeah, yeah. If you're ever in Berlin, you're gonna hear it every day, everywhere. It's I don't know what happens with the sirens here. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good, so good. I noticed a couple of them earlier, but that one was real loud.
Yeah, it's a huge avenue, but everywhere in the city you get like, I don't know, they're super loud here. I don't know.
Hey, well, people know they're coming at least.
Yeah.
um, well, I don't know if I have anything else to really touch on. Like, I think we touched on most of what I really wanted to talk about. Let's see. No, I think I've really talked about everything I want to talk about. Unless there's anything that you want to get into that we didn't really mention.
No, no, I think we mentioned that. Like I also try to talk about the topics, without directly talking about Unity and what Unity is doing, because again, like it's like unfortunate, like the situation for them, but also like it's like one thing that happened now, and honestly we've been kind of here before, like not as big as this one, right? But every time that Unity has an issue, we kind of hear a lot of people coming, a lot of interest again in Godot and all that, and nothing tells me that we're not gonna be here in the future again, right? Like it, it, I'm pretty sure that we're gonna be here in the future, like maybe 1 year, 2 years, or whenever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I try to cover all those topics as well from our point of view, right? Like what we are doing and what we want Godot to be, and you know, also what the community wants Godot to be. And yeah, we're just here like doing our own thing, and it's really nice that people now notice and that they see how powerful Godot is. And yeah, like it's been amazing to see like our funding doubling like
Oh,
during these weeks.
wow.
And yeah, we went from 25,000 euros per month to 50,000 euros per month, and also with on top of that like donations like the Relogic one, which was 100K, and that's gonna give us more breathing room to say, okay, we can continue doing this. People like it. We can maybe get a few more people on board to continue working on it full time, and make the best we can do with Godot. But we are going our own way. Like we are not gonna be like trying to replace Unity. We are just gonna make Godot better with it, right? And that's
Mhm.
that's our goal.
Well, right now, what do you see as like a deficiency that Godot has that is being worked on, or that you feel probably needs to be worked on?
There are many things for different people, right? Like we have this like the C# situation, like the fact that you can export or not to mobile. I think that's something that we have to, and it is being worked on. Also, like importing assets in general sometimes is a bit weird. Um, of course, like the industry standard, like the FBX file, which is proprietary by Autodesk, is what people use. We try to push for GLTF or open like formats. So like improving those for like just getting more people to use it good out of the box, and getting all in, no problems. I think that's also something we are working on and we can improve. And there's a lot of things from the foundation side also, like we are just very very small and we would need more people to handle more stuff, things that you might not think about, like we run a lot of web servers with a lot of stuff that needs to be constantly up to date. It has to be safe. It has to be right, like the website, how we distribute the installation, like version and all that, like the executables, like the forums, the Q&A platforms, many platforms that we maintain that are kind of part, like the documentation, all that, that are not specifically making the engine itself,
Mhm.
but that also need a lot of work and love. And that's something that if you want to contribute, it's always very nice to have people helping in those areas. Um, so yeah, like we need to have more people working not only in the engine itself, which is really important, but also in the structure to support it. The
I-
asset store, for instance, would require like those sort of things. Yeah.
If somebody wants to get involved with the project, where is the best place for them to go to? Where should they start?
If you go to the website, you will see links to the communities in which you can get maybe involved. Generally speaking, we hang out in most of like the places, like the usual places, right? Like Mastodon, Twitter, or Reddit, or like places like that.
Mhm.
But if you want to really get into collaborating with us, or like just trying to get something out, GitHub, of course, it's where everything happens.
Mhm.
Like proposals go to GitHub, like discussions go to GitHub, like PRs or opening issues, things like that. And then there's also the development chat, which is chat.godotengine.org, in which we use kind of like a Discord or Slack just for working. And there's different channels for different topics where you can go in and chat with the people who are working on those areas, to improve it. We also do meetings for different areas. So if you're interested in GDScript, you can come and you can join to one of those meetings. You don't have to participate if you don't want to at the beginning, but you can listen to what people are working on or what the problems are, and then if you get comfortable you can just start contributing. That's
Wow. I
the
was scrolling
pipeline.
through the list. You guys have like a lot of like different things here. You even have an
Oh
IRC and
yeah,
matrix still set up, which I love the fact. See, so few people still like a lot of young people just aren't gonna use IRC, but it's nice that you still have it there just for like there's gonna be people that just IRC is their thing.
yeah, I mean that's also changes, right? Like it was the place where people chatted.
Hmm.
That was the only place where the maintainers were. And after a while, with new needs, like you need to have proper like tools to do other stuff that IRC maybe doesn't provide.
Hmm.
So that's why we moved to this Rocket Chat, which
Hmm.
is like the service we use for our chat.
Hmm.
But then there's a lot of people on Discord as well now.
Yeah.
Um, we don't like Discord that much because of course, like it's just like a close company with you don't get any indexable results from it. So there's a lot of Q&A that happens in Discord that just stays in Discord and nobody else can see. But people, like young people, really like it. So you will see it's very active. Um, but yeah, everywhere almost. Like some platforms where we are not there, there's always like people that are very motivated about Godot and they create their own communities, and you can find them.
That's I think a very pleasant place to end it. Direct people to places they should know about. A website, foundation, any places you want people to go to.
Yeah, I think the website is the best place.
Mhm.
We have everything from there,
That
and
is
you know,
godotengine.org, and
yeah,
then the foundation is Godot.foundation. Yes.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. It's just, the foundation site is only like explaining a little bit what the foundation is.
Okay.
We
Yep.
will start this year, like this next year, showing more like financial reports, similar to what Blender does in terms of like where the money was coming from, where it's going, like all those kind of like accountability things that we need to do,
Mhm.
which before that was handled by the SFC. and it was a bit more like you have to open the documents like the IRS documents, and it was kind of like people didn't want to see that. So if we can make it easier for people to see where we're where their money is going for, like we're gonna make it there.
Mhm.
But yeah, most of our activity happens on the website, on the blog. We publish a lot of stuff. You can get up to date with everything. There's RSS feed, everything.
Awesome. Is there any other place you want to direct people to, like your own stuff or anything like that?
No,
No.
no,
Okay.
no, no. That's it. I just gotta, yeah.
Okay.
If they want to, I hope they will find it. They will find my old tutorials.
I'll leave a link to the YouTube channel in the description down below anyway. So if you want to check those
Yeah,
out, yeah,
yeah. I did a small documentary about Godot in
I
like the
did
last
notice that.
video I
Yes.
uploaded there. So yeah, yeah.
I haven't checked it out yet, but I did. I did see it was there. I might have to go and watch it afterwards. Actually, I'm gonna go to sleep after this. Maybe I'll go watch it after I wake up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That sounds good. Yeah,
Because
must be quite late for you already.
it's 1:30 a.m. It's not that late. Um, I'm
Yeah.
usually in bed like half an hour ago, so it's not that bad.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I guess as for me, the main channel is Brody Robertson. I do Linux videos there 6 days a week. I've got the gaming channel, Brody on Games. That is on Twitch and YouTube. Right now, I'm playing through Armored Core 6, and I've probably finished Final Fantasy 16 by the time this comes out. So I'm gonna say Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance, but don't quote me on that. And this channel, if you're listening to the audio version, you can find the video version at Tech Over Tea on YouTube. And there is an audio version on pretty much every podcast platform. Look up Tech Over Tea. There is an RSS feed. Put it in your favorite app, and you're good to go. I'll give you the final word. What do you want to say?
Just keep making games.
Awesome. Awesome. See you guys later.